What's up everybody, Commander Sanctum here, and today we have a brand new deck tech using Avatar Aang. Aang is a 4/4 human avatar ally for red, green, white, blue that has flying, firebending 2, and whenever you waterbend, earthbend, firebend, or airbend, draw a card. If you've done all four, transform Aang into Aang, Master of Elements. This Aang is a 6/6 avatar ally that has flying, reduces costs of spells by Wooburg, and at the beginning of each upkeep, you can transform Aang back to gain 4 life, draw 4 cards, put 4 +1/+1 counters on him, and deal 4 damage to each opponent. Wow, this card has a lot going on. The fact that you can bend to draw a card without any turn limit restrictions makes the front side alone powerful, but then adding on the back side, this thing is absolutely nutty. For this deck, we're going to really try to maximize the amount of bending we'll be doing, both to draw the cards, and to hopefully be able to transform Aang into his final form. Firebending is pretty much taken care of with Aang, so for air and earth, we'll be focusing more so on ones that do it when they enter, letting us flicker them out to re-trigger their effect at will. Waterbending will be a bit more difficult to do consistently, but there's still plenty of low-cost options we can use. With that, let's get into the card highlights. When it comes to airbending cards, no one's going to be better at it than Aang. With that, we have a trio of Aang cards in Aang, Airbending Master, Aang, Swift Savior, and Aang, the Last Airbender, all of which enter an airbend either a creature, non-land permanent, or even spell. They all have secondary effects as well, some more useful than others, but the Swift Savior is actually great for us, since he has a waterbending ability. Admittedly, it is 8 mana, so it's pretty costly, but it's a nice addition if you just have waterbending left to transform Commander Aang in a turn. The next best character at airbending is Aang's faithful companion, Appa. For this we have Appa Steadfast Guardian and Appa Loyal Sky Bison, both of which, again, enter the battlefield and airbend non-land permanents you control. The Steadfast Guardian can generate you tokens whenever you recast something that's been put into exile, while the Sky Bison lets you alternatively give a creature flying, which probably won't be used too much in this deck. Still, the Sky Bison really shines in the fact that his trigger is both an enter and an attack, making him a much more consistent source of airbending without needing to actively flicker him out. For some non-creature based airbending, we have Glider Staff, which is an equipment that'll give an attached creature +1/+1 in flying, giving a nice bit of evasion to a non-commander creature we have. Airbender Ascension not only airbends a creature when it enters, it can also act as a consistent flicker effect once it has enough quest counters, giving us more opportunity to re-trigger our bending abilities to get the last few complete for Aang. Airbender's Reversal is an instant that can either airbend a creature you control, potentially saving it from removal, or even destroy one of your opponent's creatures that's attacking you, making it a versatile option in different scenarios. Now for the Earthbending cards. Thankfully, there are quite a few that also enter the battlefield and immediately earthbend, making for great sources of reoccurring earthbending if we can blink them out. Boomy Unleashed and Boomy Eclectic Earthbender both enter and earthbend for 1 and 4, respectively, while also having combat-based abilities that can help attack with your army of lands as a way to end the game. Dai Li Agents earthbends 1 when it enters, and then earthbends 1 again, giving us 2 instances of earthbend and therefore 2 instances of card draw from Aang. The agents also have another combat-based ability, just like the Boomies, that pair very well with the large army of land creatures. Earthbending Student and Earth Kingdom General both enter an Earthbend 2, with the Student even giving land creatures vigilance, and the General gaining you some life whenever you earthbend, once per turn. Badgermole Cub only earthbends 1 when it enters, but makes those animated lands tap for an additional green, making it an absolutely phenomenal ramp engine for us. For some more characters that have earthbending, we have Haru Hidden Talent, which doesn't earthbend himself, but will instead earthbend whenever another ally enters under your control. Since a ton of the avatar characters are allies, this effect will honestly likely be more consistent than if he himself had earthbending, making it a phenomenal source of such. We'd be very remiss if we didn't mention the best earthbender, Toph, in the highlights with her plethora of cards from the set. Toph the Blind Bandit enters and immediately earthbends 2, while Toph Greatest Earthbender earthbends equal to the amount of mana spent to cast her. Since she's not our commander, this will pretty much always be 4, but could instead be 2 if we cast her after airbending, which is an important thing to keep in mind. Regardless, the fact that she also gives land creatures double strike makes her yet another formidable lieutenant for our eventual land army. With even more Toph cards, we have Toph Hard-Headed Teacher, which doesn't earthbend when she enters, but instead earthbends whenever you cast a spell, making her an even more effective source of earthbending on subsequent turns. Toph Earthbending Master is similar, earthbending whenever you attack, making it much easier to trigger an earthbend on pretty much any of our turns. Toph the first Metal Bender is another consistent earthbending, doing it on end step, while also turning your non-token artifacts into lands as well. While we aren't too heavy on artifacts for our deck, this is still a nice added bonus to turn something like our Glider Staff into an additional source of mana. Now for the, in my opinion, more difficult bending techniques to trigger consistently, Waterbending. Since Waterbending in itself is usually either an activated ability or an additional cost, we can't really take advantage of any enters or specific phase triggers to get it off. Still, we have quite a few options to choose from to make sure we can do it. Katara Water Tribe's Hope is a waterbending ability that can be cast for 1 if you want, though given its effect of changing base power and toughness, you'll probably want to do it for a bit more each turn. But hey, it's a great, cheap option if you need it in a pinch. Katara Bending Prodigy costs 6 mana to waterbend to simply draw a card, making it a pretty heavy cost, but again, since we want to make sure we can waterbend in a turn, it's a decent source of doing such. Yu the Moon Spirit also costs 5 mana to waterbend, but has the amazing ability of letting you cast a non-creature spell without paying its mana cost. This can help you get your other bending techniques off in the turn if need be, making this a great option for waterbending. For some spells that waterbend as an additional cost, we have Waterbender's Restoration and Foggy Swamp Visions, both of which let you waterbend X. The best part of both of these is that they're great to re-trigger our Enter the Battlefield abilities, with the Restoration letting us flicker them out, and the Visions letting us pseudo-reanimate them from our graveyard in the form of tokens. Again, these two are excellent to help set up our other bending cards, making them great first cards to cast. Spirit Water Revival is an expensive waterbending additional cost of 6, but lets you completely refill your hand and gives you no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, making it an amazing card draw source, even if it does cost effectively 9 mana. For one card that kind of does enter in waterbends, we have Hama, the Bloodbender, which technically exiles a non-creature card from an opponent's graveyard and lets you waterbend it instead of casting it, but it's still close enough that it's an effective flicker target if we can exile a cheap non-creature card from our opponent. Waterbending Lesson is a decent card draw spell that lets you waterbend 2 to not discard a card, though that does make the total cost of the card 6 mana for 3 cards. Not the most efficient cost, but it's important to remember with all these cards that you can tap artifacts or creatures to help offset the waterbending cost, making it not quite as bad if you have any extra creatures or artifacts to spare. Waterbender Ascension can be a great alternative source of card draw once you've hit enough, but has the great waterbending ability to make a creature unblockable for a turn. This can be especially effective with Aang, who needs to attack to get the firebending off, or just as a way to finish off an opponent. Now for the flicker effects that we can use to re-trigger our enter abilities. We'll start out with some mass flicker cards that'll maximize our ability to get more airbending and earthbending to trigger. Eerie Interlude and Hide on the Ceiling both flicker a variable number of creatures, with the Interlude letting you simply choose which ones, while the Ceiling requires you to pay a mana for each creature. Ghostwave flickers all creatures you control, regardless of ones you may or may not want. While this can make you lose your tokens, it's important to remember that even with Aang himself flickering out, he'll still see all the other enter abilities go off, meaning they'll count towards his card draw ability that turn. Ghostly Flicker lets you exile 2 creatures and have them return immediately, all for 3 mana. Since our main sources of airbending and earthbending are enter abilities, this can be a great way to get those 2 bending techniques done with for the turn, all from one spell. Speaking of spells, Displacer Kitten will flicker out a permanent you control whenever you cast a non-creature spell, making this a very effective way to get those triggers to repeat over and over again, drawing you a ton of cards in the process. Since Aang is our only source of firebending, we'll want to make sure we can not only protect him, but also make sure he can attack whenever we need him to, even if that's immediately after playing him. To help with this, we have 2 of the most well-known equipments in Commander, Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves. Both of these can provide protection to Aang from targeted removal, while also letting him attack as soon as he enters the battlefield, whether this is from him flickering out or being cast. Again, since firebending requires a creature to attack to trigger, we want to make sure Aang can attack each turn, since he's our only source of firebending, making both of these great options to help facilitate that. There are also a few utility cards that I wanted to mention that work well with our overall themes. Avatar's Wrath is not only another source of airbending, but also a great removal spell, since it airbends all creatures while simultaneously preventing your opponents from recasting them for at least another turn. Bender's Waterskin is a pretty common mana rock, but one that untaps on each player's turn, helping you with both your waterbending abilities on other turns, or even maybe flicker effects that can help save some of your creatures. Fist of Suns is a bit of a combo with Aang, specifically Master of Elements. Since the Fist allows you to play WUBRG for any spell instead of its mana cost, and Aang Master of Elements reduces costs of spells by WUBRG, this means that, with both of them out, you can cast any spell for free. This is basically a create your own omniscience in this deck, so if that's something you don't like playing, I'd keep this card out. But if you don't mind, Fist of Suns is a great synergistic card with Aang that can let you cast all of your stuff for completely free. Here's an example deck list utilizing all the previously mentioned cards. Additional cards include more element bending cards in Earthbender Ascension and Crashing Wave, some lands that help out with bending in Ba Sing Se and Fire Nation Palace, and plenty of ramp to make sure we have access to all of our colors in Open the Way and Farseek. One of my favorite aspects of the Avatar set is the uniqueness of the bending techniques. They're so thematic with their colors and fit so well, plus they're rather unique in the world of Magic, even if most of them are variants of other keywords. So the fact that Aang is all about using all of them was a big draw for me. Not to mention that flip side. Master of Elements is seriously one crazy card, even if it can be somewhat difficult to actually get him to that side. Still, if you're able to, the backside is well worth the effort. Even disregarding the flip side, however, can I just say how crazy it is to be able to draw a card whenever you element bend, and not even have it restricted to once a turn, or in any way at all? That alone is absolutely insane, and makes Aang such a great value and card advantage engine that even playing 1 or 2 bending cards is well worth it for a turn. Seriously, there's so much value in Aang that it's hard to go wrong. I do wonder if having Aang being the only firebending source makes sense or not. We'll always have access to him, so we'll always have a source of firebending, and, to be fair, if he's consistently killed off, the lack of firebending will be the least of our problems. So I think having him be the only source will work, especially since it frees us up to have more of the other 3 bending types instead. Still, I'd love to know what you think about this and how you'd build an Avatar Aang deck yourself. I hope you enjoyed watching this deck tech on Avatar Aang and Aang Master of Elements. The full deck list outlined in this video can be found at the Archedeck link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Magic content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.